So the Best of Bristol lecture series are a really exciting and inspirational event to showcase the best of University of Bristol's lectures. It's driven by the student community, so all of our lecturers were nominated by students and were then chosen by a student committee. So Keir, I met a few weeks ago to do an interview. He is a lecturer in design thinking, but also he's many, many other things. He's also an artist and innovator, and he was a very interesting person to talk to. So his lecture today will be on what is innovation. I'm sure that everyone, including myself, has many questions about his lecture title and can't wait to find out what it is. So yeah, it's with great pleasure that I introduce Keir.
Right, who's an innovator? Just give me some names. Who would you say an innovator is?
Tesla.
Okay, Tesla, nice. Who else? Marie Curie, yeah, lovely. Anyone else? Right, who would obviously be an innovator? If you had to pick someone that you'd be like, them. Steve Jobs, there we go. All right, so what I'm going to talk today about is innovation. So we're going to look at how we kind of understand innovation and who an innovator is. And what I really want to do today is try and expand on a kind of a general notion of who can be an innovator and what innovation is. I'm going to do that through 3 case studies. They're all concerned with the lived experience of people with disabilities, or disabled people, is probably more proper in this case. So I'll get started. So, the reason I asked you that is I teach as part of a program called Access to Bristol, which you might know about, which gets young people from around Bristol postcodes and some others in the southwest, I think including out in Wales. It works with young people who are less likely to apply to Bristol University, right? So people who are from Bristol, they're Bristolian, they're from a kind of superly broad range of cultures and economic backgrounds. So I'm doing a sort of taster session with them. And I just said, okay, so who's an innovator? So I just thought, get some brilliant answers. Guess there was one person all of them came up with after 10 minutes of discussion. Right? Elon Musk. Okay. I mean, great, he does very well, Saint Elon. I mean, has everyone heard of Elon Musk? You're aware of his work? Is he the richest man in the world? I always get confused. It's him, Bezos, I don't know. He's very rich, right, as well. So, undoubtedly, he's innovated. He's created PayPal, he's done SpaceX, Tesla, all these things. But what's the problem with that? So I'm going to ask you questions like in my class, sorry. So what might be a problem with that? Just having just Elon Musk is this kind of ideal of being an innovator. Yes?
I think it's a team of one, it's an innovator of one.
It's an innovator one, that's really nice. And I actually hadn't thought that. So yeah, just an individual, a single person, right? What else?
Doesn't represent any sorts of people, just a white male.
Yeah? Yeah, definitely, me, essentially, white male, kind of middle class. What else? Okay, so I'm going to talk as well, sorry. It's kind of difficult doing this in the most. So normally when I teach, I'm in the middle talking to people, getting people to do stuff, and it's slightly odd just speaking at you, so I will do this a lot. Well, for me, it's a kind of an impoverished view of innovation and what an innovator looks like. Not that their opinion is impoverished, but this idea that it can be focused on essentially, I mean, aside from maybe Marie Curie and some of your answers, but you're all very in the know people, I would say. The issue with Elon Musk for me is that he represents commerce and making value and capital, really. So making money, essentially. Yes, he produces products, but essentially it's about generating things and generating money, right? Again, nothing intrinsically wrong with it, or there might be. But it's quite a small percentage of the population that is Elon Musk, right? It's literally one person that can be that amazing and that much of an innovator. So what I'm going to try and do today is think about how we define innovation and how we define innovators, and I'm going to give you some examples. So I just love this GIF. There is no other reason it's on the screen other than I really like that. It makes me really happy. So, what's innovation? There's lots of models of innovation in the world, right? So this ranges everything from management, you've got in, medicine, in the arts, in technology particularly. There's ways of thinking about innovation, right? What I'm going to offer now isn't the model of innovation, it's a model of innovation, right? It's useful and it sits with my thinking, I think. So for me, let me just get my notes so I don't get this wrong. There we go. It's about making changes in the way that we behave individually and collectively in the world, right? Just as a really simple starting point. I'm sure we could pick this apart in more detail, but this is a kind of a general introduction. The way that we do that, for me, is there's a few different elements to this. One is about exposing the structures of the kind of the usual social actions or the social norms that we're part of, right? So exposing that they exist, those structures, that they are created as opposed to being innate. The next thing is creating interventions that A, can expose the structures that we kind of sit within, but can also disrupt them, right? Offer new ways of doing things. So a really obvious answer for, say, Elon Musk would be something like SpaceX, right? New forms of space travel that disrupts the usual NASA massive monolith ways of making, right? So it's ways of making change in the world. It's doing that by creating interventions that disrupt the way that we usually do things, but it's also about offering something new, potentially, right? A new way of thinking, a new way of doing. So, if that's innovation then, who's an innovator? So what I want to avoid is this idea of this is what they look like. There is a single set of qualities for an innovator. I think what I found reading around a lot of stuff on management and innovation was, actually it's quite useful, the stuff on management and innovation I found. It was kind of better than some of the kind of slightly waffy, arty tech stuff. And there's 3 components, they reckon, to an innovator. I'm going to get this wrong as well, so I'm just going to make sure I check. So, it's the creativity to envision new ways of doing, right? And to find out how we do things already. There's the kind of technical ability to create those interventions or make change. So, technical might be literally producing a piece of software, but it might be about staging a performance. It might be about making a beautifully crafted object, right? Bear with me. The last one is the courage to challenge out and try new behaviours. So you have to have that courage to actually go against potentially social norms or usual ways of doing things. That takes courage because you're doing something awkward or difficult or disruptive. So why does this matter in our case? Well, okay, I'm just going to give a bit of context to this lecture, right? So I teach in the Centre for Innovation. I teach a unit in the first year called Being Human, which is what this is from. In that unit, I'm dealing with students, who are quite a lot here, from 13 different disciplines, right? So they're from physics, history, theatre, music. I'm not going to try and do all of these because I get them wrong. In fact, is it 13 this year? It's 13 this year, isn't it? I get really confused. It's 11 this year, 13 next year. Okay, sorry, I get the numbers wrong. But essentially, I have to work with this group of people, and what we teach is how to work with each other, right? So within groups, they have to do these projects. We also have to work with people outside of the centre in the university, because that's how we innovate, right? We can't just innovate in a grey room with people like us. So what I teach is pretty much what those qualities are, right? Ways of exposing the world, thinking about modelling the world. How do we live? How do we act? And there's a tension in that between essentialising groups of people, right? So if you're designing or creating or innovating with people, you need to understand them to an extent. So this idea of... Sorry, just lost my train of thought. I'll get back. That's it. So the difference between essentialising and modelling. So with an essentialising a group of people, you're saying you are like this, right? And it's a fairly static thing. For me, a model says, these are ways you behave in this particular context and these particular dynamics, and these are some of the structural issues around those that affect that. Again, there's probably a long set of lectures to do on what we mean by models and what we mean by essentialising, but it's useful here, so I'm going to give you just a little simple. Okay, so, there we go. So, today we're concerned with, sorry, I'm touching things. Today we're concerned with the lived experience of people with disabilities in this particular lecture, right? So I just thought a few little stats, quite useful. 1 in 5 people are disabled. That massively goes up if you include things like neurodiversity, undiagnosed, colour blindness, to nearly 60 or 70%. Prevalence raises with age. As we get older, we're more likely to get it. 4 out of 5 disabilities are acquired. So what does this tell us? Well, it's a lot of people, right? When we're talking about disabilities, we're talking about a huge proportion of the population. It's hard to talk about that group of people as the same group of people, right? But there are common lived experiences for people with disabilities. We'll come on to this in terms of a model. So I'm going to explore kind of 3, really 2 models of how we think about disability. So the first is a medical model, right? Now a medical model says impairment is all. So in this model, it says your body is broken, there is something wrong with you, and it needs to be fixed by medical professionals. So the role of the disabled person is to accept that, to be fixed, and to accept that they are broken, okay? Charity model, right, is a kind of moralistic extension of the medical model that says not only are you broken, but that you should be pitied, right? That disabled people are tragic. And the people that can fix them are able-bodied people by giving money, lots of money. So we know there's $1 billion industries in this, right? Social model. So the social model says, all right, so we have impairments, right? So I don't know, it might be my neurodiversity, it might be that certain parts of my body don't function in the way that a lot of people do, and it makes it difficult. Now, the onus, though, in a social model is on people being disabled by society, not the impairment that they have. So an example of this would be, a really simple example is, right, you're a wheelchair user, you get to a building, there's stairs, not a ramp. You can't access it. You are disabled by the fact that there are steps. If there's a ramp, you are no longer disabled. Your impairment is not stopping you from doing the thing that you wanted to do. So the role, sorry, bear with me. So what the social model does is it aligns it with a kind of more a civil rights approach to disability. It aligns it with this idea that if a decision is to be made or if something is to be changed, then about someone with a disability, then they need to be involved in that process, right? Their lived experience needs to be part of the things that affect their lives. So, how do we apply this? Well, I'm going to give you 3 examples, all right? Some of them are a bit out there, which is kind of the point. What I'm going to argue, though, is that every single one of these pieces or these artists is an innovator, and the work that they create is innovative. Kind of using the social model, or in fact, definitely using the social model, this is the entire point. Yeah, I'll let the work speak. So, this is the Disabled Avant-Garde. They ran from 2010 to 2017. They are made up of artists Catherine Arniello and Aaron Williamson. This is what they describe themselves as, right? They're a duo that create video and performance that disrupts and causes confusion. They labelled themselves disabled artists, right? So they're calling themselves specifically disabled artists. And they say that they're sick of the balloons and banners culture of disability arts. I won't talk too much about that, but whilst you're watching this, I'm going to show quite a few videos, just because I need to. Whilst you're watching this, just think about the language that's being used. I'm going to ask you some questions about it, because I'm a pain. Was there anything else before we got in? Oh, that was it. They also describe themselves as using crip humour, right? So there is a thread in disability arts of crip art, which is the use of the word cripple by people with disabilities to own that word, right? As much as that might be in, say, gay culture or African American culture, it's retaking a word. So they could describe themselves as having crip humour, which is both pitch black and self-knowing. There they are. So this piece is Charity Store, Disabled Avant-Garde. It's a video and a performance. Show you.
Aaron and Catherine are 2 very special people, and together they make amazing art. Aaron is profoundly deaf, and Catherine is confined to a wheelchair. Despite their severe handicaps, these 2 courageous people have formed a strong bond while taking art therapy classes over the years. Aaron is unable to hear a pin drop, but this doesn't stop him. Here we see him with an ingenious invention that helps him to draw beautiful pictures. Sadly, when Aaron was only 14 years of age, he was afflicted with a terrible condition called sensorineural deafness, which which cruelly took away all of his hearing and made him permanently deaf. Despite this tragic loss, Aaron has been attending the art therapy classes, and this has helped Aaron to build his confidence under such tragic circumstances.
Can't get off the board.
When Catherine was first born, everyone thought she was normal until she showed no signs of crawling. After a few months, she was diagnosed with a fatal crippling disease called spinal muscular atrophy. As the years have progressed, Catherine's condition has deteriorated. However, she finds her strength in the art therapy classes she attends each week. Aaron and Catherine first started making great art together in their early 20s, and to this day they continue to make amazing art. They are very excited because they get to run a charity stall at the Brick Lane Art Car Boot Fair and at Watch This Space at the National Theatre. This is an incredible achievement, and they are so happy and are actively participating in everything they do. This has inspired them to come up with some exciting new additions to their work. Catherine and Aaron are aware of the health risks with smoking, but decided that a limited edition set of ashtrays would be a popular addition to the stall, since lots of artists still smoke fags. Besides, they were comparatively easy to make. The jam was the trickiest thing to make for the stall, but in the end they decided just to use ready-made jam from Tesco. Catherine had heard that ready-made is a very arty concept associated with Marcel Duchamp, so it all fitted perfectly, as there would be a lot of arty people coming to the fair.
Interestingly, every time I show this to students, there's at least a couple that don't realise it's satire, right? I don't say that to be mean to my students. I say that because I think it says a lot, right, about the language that we use and the way that we approach disabled arts. So both of these people are very established artists in their own right. Both performance artists, both have kind of very successful international careers as artists. So what they're doing in this piece is they're trying to, they're sort of rallying against that notion that the only reason you would buy or engage with artists who are disabled is through pity. So we think back to that charity model, right? So that art boot, the cart boot art for sale, where it is charity stall, that they have one in Brick Lane, they had one at the South Bank Gallery. They're both filled with contemporary art and contemporary artists, very high level art, right? They're selling shite, they're selling shitty ashtrays, jam, or you could also pet the dog for 50p, right? People are still buying it and saying what a worthy thing it was. So some of their other works included a protest, a fake protest, about the fact that Ryanair wouldn't let her fly to Dignitas to kill herself. What else has she done? They've done a performance where they asked artists to come and talk about the work in a kind of very safe space, and then spent half an hour insulting them and telling them why it wouldn't work. This was able-bodied artists. So what they do is kind of flip this idea of what a disabled artist can be, but it also kind of puts you in a position, I think, or the people who are buying the art, or the people who are kind of engaging with their work, it puts them in an awkward position. Because it asks them, okay, why are you thinking that it's all right to buy a piece of crap ashtray and a tinfoil thing for £5 at an art fair? Is it because they're clearly disabled? If we look at the language that was used, courageous, suffering, what else? Someone help me here. Give me another word. Tragic. Did you notice the big pencil he was using as well? And he's deaf, right? He was afflicted, right? All of that really builds up a particular narrative about how we see disabled people, and it's really highlighting that. So, I'll take the next one. So this is work by an artist called Roland Carline. He finished at the Royal Academy about 2 years ago, I think now, maybe a year ago. If you don't know, Royal Academy is the art school in the world, first art school in the world. It's literally the academy. So if we talk about the academy in art, it's It's where it stems from, right? It's one of the most legitimate, if you've been there, you are an artist. And this will come into it in a bit. So what I want you to think about is these 4 things when we're going to look at it. I'm going to talk about these. He comes up, ooh, going back, not going in front of the screen. I'm going to use my laser. There we go. Joyful amateurism, right? I really love this term. It's a term he's coined, and we'll talk about it. I want you to think about who the author is in this work. I want you to think about voyeurism and ownership and legitimacy, okay? And we'll talk about these, and I'll talk about these because I've got a huge amount of time normally I get to discuss, come back, but... Okay, so this is the first piece. This is the piece he made for his final piece for the Royal Academy. It won like the highest award at the Academy. He worked with a professional dancer called Francis Majekodunme, I've been trying to say that all day, who's on the left, who is the co-director of a dance company called Blink in London. The idea of this piece, I'm going to read this because they say it really nicely, and I won't, is the events in this video pivot on the pair's desire to build a friendship based on a shared sense of humour and a love of performing. So this was a series of performances they did every single day at the Royal Academy, and then there's quite a long video that goes with it. I've just given you a minute of it.
What? Spread out a bit.
No. This is about you. This is about me.
We're sharing it.
Yeah, but I don't want to share.
Well, it's just about you then.
Exactly. I'm here to look after my country.
It's now 2045. It's the future. Okay?
What are you doing?
I'm showing you the native dance from space. Protect Britain, but what happens if something like this happens?
What the hell?
You did not protect Britain then, did you?
So, Beyonce, can we fix this? Can we fix this, please?
Please, my lips. Hell no.
Roland, sorry is his artist's name. His work is really concerned with the joy of art, very simply. The joy that art can bring in most contexts. So most of his career he's worked as a play worker, as a social worker, as a health worker, working in applied art settings. What he wanted to do was use his ability as an artist, his legitimacy, his platform as an artist to platform other people's work and to demonstrate the joy of creating. So what I find really interesting about this piece is he was accused by fellow students and tutors, some of the tutors, of exploiting Francis. Now, Francis is a co-director of a professional dance company, performs internationally, right? What does that say about the individuals at the Royal Academy? For me, that says, well, you don't think that a young black man with Downs can be a professional dancer. So obviously, Rowley is exploiting them, right? They changed their mind when they saw the piece and the work. I think they just saw him coming in. There's an interesting point about this, about feeling uncomfortable seeing someone with special needs on camera, being a professional performer. So what they did after this, they set up this thing called the Deptford Freestylers, which is an inclusive dance thing. It's there to just have fun, basically. Anybody, any shape, any style, as it says, right? This is Rowley, by the way. This is Francis, just so you know. So he's just been made, literally today actually, he was originally given a 3-month residency at the new Goldsmith Centre for Contemporary Art. Again, very prestigious space, opened 2018 I think, paid for by people like Damien Hirst, ex kind of students there. He was given the opportunity to do a series of performances. So what he did was, instead of using his own performance, or he did do one, he used the 3 others to work with other people. So this is Deptford Freestylers. Now, I have to say, I've worked with Rowley, I've danced with Rowley since I was 4, so we're best friends. We used to do a night called DJ Sex Machine and Super Best Friends, which was just a really draggy, fun night to get everyone to dance, right? He's basically turned that into like a professional career in the art world, which I think is brilliant. So this is at the Goldsmith Centre. It was an open event, you could just come and join in, and I'll just show you the video.
No lying to you.
No one likes you, burn!
Sorry, what's your name? You what? Sherry?
My name is Sherry King.
Is to have a second referendum with a 6-month serve and final say on Brexit, either it's a sensible deal or they remain in the EU. And actually, remaining in the EU is the best way.
Ladies and gentlemen, would you please welcome the new leader of the Labour Party, Sabia.
Going to get a lot weirder, just telling you. So what I really love about this is that he sets up these spaces for people, right? He creates what he calls loose things. The interesting about Riley is one of the greatest draftsmen I've ever seen. Incredible painter, does incredible lifelike paintings if he needs to. What he made for this is this series, what he calls loose things. Costumes, objects. You can't really see something of play as I'm saying it. So the costumes that they're wearing, the objects on the walls, the things that are around, he creates so they can interact. Now, he talks about disappearing into the work, right? So this is a performance at a very prestigious gallery. He's got quite a lot of reputation, but what he does is he facilitates, becomes part of the performance, and he allows other people to perform and be joyful. And again, I think this is what really engages me about his work, is that sense of joy, that things can be just beautiful and fun, and you create a space that allows you to do that. It's not much more, it's that. So the next piece I want to show was one of his other performances, which is with a group called Ambient Jam. Now, Ambient Jam have been around for about 25 years. They work with adults with PMLD, which is profound and multiple learning difficulties. What they do is they have these sessions which they call deep hanging out. So there's objects, people perform, do things, they interact. It's half adults with PMLD and it's half facilitators. So some of them are artists, some of them musicians. What they say, though, is it's not a performance. It's deep hanging out. You have to join in. It's not for someone. So again, create this space. It was an open event for the public. You could come and join in, right? Just want to show you. For me, Rowley's work is innovative in that it offers new ways of being and performing. It offers legitimacy through the power that he has or the capital that he has built. It recognises the value of performance from people with disabilities that goes beyond just, well done, you've done really well there, you've really tried, right? He also talks about the fact that if you don't engage with these communities, if you don't provide structures and platforms for everyone to participate in cultural life, then we're impoverished, we have less, right? We just rely on people that look like me, then what have we got? We've got this tiny, tiny little percentage of the world. And frankly, I'm neurodiverse, I've really struggled. So how does 99% of the world, right? Who's the author? Is it Rowley? Is it the Freestylers? Is it Ambient Jam? Ambient Jam have been running longer than Rowley's been an artist. Voyeurism and ownership, right? That piece to me speaks to kind of Victorian asylums. It speaks to the kind of awkwardness of working with people or watching people where you don't necessarily understand why they're moving or how they're moving. There's something about the legitimacy that I talked about, so the fact that he has this established practice that then allows others to perform and to demonstrate value, I think. I also just freaking love the costumes and the stuff, right? It's deliberately crappy looking, but well made. And a part of that is about inviting people in. So we used to do this night called DJ Sex Machine, right? The whole point of it was that we acted as idiots, we dressed as idiots, we danced terribly, which meant every single person in the room could as well. You weren't embarrassed, you didn't feel like you weren't part of it. So last example I want to talk about is Tourette's Hero, which is where I get the title from. It's a tic that she has. So you might have seen Jess Thom on TV, in the theatre, in film, cinemas, on social media, in books. She's quite prolific. So Tourette's Hero is made up of two people. Jess Thom, Matt Pountney, though Matt Pountney tends to stay in the background. Jess has Tourette's, which, as she puts it, is the most misunderstood condition on the planet. It's often determined as the swearing disease, which is coprolalia, where you say things. So what Jess realised in 2010 was that she could use her Tourette's as a superpower, right? As a creative superpower. She attended Camberwell College of Art, and then she was at the Royal College of Art after that. She wasn't diagnosed with Tourette's until 2009. So what they decided to do was record all the verbal tics that she says. So there is a database online you can access, which is the funniest thing you will ever see in your life. Some of them are just fat. That's one she made. That was one of the first pieces she made. So that's something she says. God's moved to Watford on Sunday. So she made a piece with God moving, using church adverts around East London, photoshopping to put her tics in, right? She's worked with people like the Two Bears to create tunes. I made a series of performance work with her. We've done work at the Tate Modern and the Tate Britain. So a lot of her work centres around creating spaces, again, for young people who are neurotypical as a way to be able to access cultural venues, right? She also, aside from the kind of activism side of things, creates incredible work based on her tics. So I want to show two examples, but there's a particular journey she went to get into theatre, and I think it's really worth kind of exploring that bit. So I'm going to do it in her own words. So here she's talking to, I'm going to get her name, Ed Parrott, who is just completed her PhD on, what's the word? Sorry, theatre people, when you get people to be in your production. Casting, there's the word, sorry. About casting disabled people and how you do that. Sorry, actually, let me just go back. So this was a documentary about the international tour she did with a theatre piece, which I'm going to show you in a minute. Oh, she's also a Wellcome Trust Fellow, which kind of builds in later.
My journey to the stage really is an unconventional one in that I really am only a performer and only an actor. Biscuit, because being in an audience wasn't something that I could do. And there was one particular experience where I went to Biscuit, a performance by the comedian Mark Thomas. We did loads of planning and preparation, and I met him beforehand, Biscuit, and he introduced me to the audience at the start of the show. But despite all of that preparation and all of that planning, I was still asked to move during the interval and sit separately to everybody else because of the noises I was making. And I sat in a sound booth next to the stage that was covered in glass, and I sobbed. I have never felt so humiliated and embarrassed, and just this sort of the outpouring of emotion that created of being asked to move, of feeling that wasn't a place for me. I felt totally humiliated, and I promised myself in that moment that I would never set foot in another theatre again because it felt damaging to me. Thankfully, that wasn't a promise I kept, and instead I was supported by friends and creative organisations to occupy the only seat in the house that I wouldn't be asked to leave, on stage.
And you watch the documentary, it's amazing. So she was a Mark Thomas show. She'd phoned up beforehand because she hadn't been to a theatre for about 5 years. She'd been introduced to the audience that she would make some noises, but the audience still complained and made a move at half time. Mark Thomas, I just want to point out, was horrified when he found out afterwards. So this is actually the last video. I'm nearly there. What amazes me about Jess's work, right, is that not only does she support other people, not only does she use her Tourette's as a creative tool, she calls it a random language generator, but she also creates this international body of work that is incredible in its own right? That is beyond just her, her campaigning and her position on disability. It's good in its own right, and it's also only possible because she has Tourette's, right? There would be no way she could have made this piece. Now, don't know if anyone knows much about this piece, not I, Samuel Beckett. So it's, in fact, she will talk about this in great length, so I'll let her do it. The big thing to remember is the Beckett Foundation will not let you change any stage directions at all. It has to be exactly as he did it, right? So what she did is she did the performance, but she has Tourette's. So every single time she does the performance, she says something different during the performance. Their point to the Beckett Foundation was, yeah, we're still doing it as written, as stage directed. These pronouncements, these things, I can't control these. So I'll just show you the trailer, because it kind of explains it slightly.
Losing control of your body isn't something that I have to imagine. That's part of my life. Out! Into this world, tiny little thing before it's time. Not I. It's the story of a woman at a point in her life when she's experiencing some sort of massive brain event. It was not hers at all, not her voice at all. She is adamant that she's not going to accept the noise she can hear as her own voice.
It is completely horrifying. Once you're tied in, you have to wait till the end of the show before anyone will let you out.
I've never worked with anyone with Tourette's before.
Imagine! No idea what she's saying!
Every time she performs it differently.
What? The buzzing! Yes! All the time, the buzzing! The buzzing. Because you can still hear the buzzing! The buzzing in the brain. People don't think about the sensation of tics. Mouth on fire! Stream of words in her ear, practically in her ear. Sort of surging sensation. Sometimes comes from my spine, sometimes like an itching in the blood. For me, it's not just a story or just a classic text from literature. It talks about my experience now. I believe passionately that disabled and non-disabled people can achieve all sorts of amazing things, but different types of body need to do things in different ways. It's a part of life that we need to do things differently.
I'm coming towards the end, actually, but I just think this example, for me, encapsulates innovation. So, what's happened recently, in fact I think it's launching literally this month, is Battersea Arts Centre is going to become the world's first relaxed venue. So, what's a relaxed venue? You might have seen these before in supermarkets, where they have evenings where they will lower the lights, they will reduce any tannoy noise, they will take the beeps off the scanners, so that people who are sensitive to that, it might be neurotypical, it might be you're on the autistic spectrum, it allows you to use that space, right? Now, theatres, like you guys right now, you have to sit very still, and you have to be very quiet, right? It's a standard proscenium arch thing, Now in performance, that's a very new idea. I'm talking like last 100 years or so. Again, forgive me if I'm getting that wrong in terms of theatre. I'm not a theatre practitioner. You've got things like carnival, you've got people that join in, you know, in Shakespeare time, they wouldn't have sat there quietly, they would have pissed in the aisles and thrown things, right? So, their point is, for theatre, it's incredibly difficult, as we just heard, if you have a condition that doesn't allow you to sit quietly, right? Or to sit, for example. So what they've done is, over the years, there's been relaxed performances, right? Where you can talk, you can move, if you need to chill out, that's fine. There's audience participation to an extent. So what they've done is work with Jess, well, Jess worked with them to create the entire venue as a relaxed venue. So it includes chill out areas, it includes technical things, you know, like hearing loops, ways of being able to access. Every single performance is considered in terms of accessibility. So if it's touring, it has to accept that it will be a relaxed venue. So they have 3 key components to this, which again, you can read in great detail, and it's really fascinating on the website, but no new barriers, right? We're not going to make it any harder for you to access. So they understand as well that barriers aren't just physical, they can be social, attitudinal, all the things that we've talked about, right, in terms of social model. Equality of experience, they say, right? I think this is a really nice quote. I'm just going to read this, because again, he says it way more eloquent than I will. And he, being Tariq Iskander, who's the new artistic director, says, there are a lot of cultural spaces where you can sit in silence, still as possible with others who want to experience art in that way too. You're really well catered for. Right, this isn't changing 0.0001% of performances in the world, but they are relaxed. Quality of experience, I think, is really important in that if I walk into a venue, most things are accessible to me, right? I can sit, I can listen, I'm able to get a drink, I don't have to think before I go to the venue whether it's going to be suitable for me. When I get to the venue, I don't have to say, well, this is wrong, right? That should be the same for everybody. That's their takeaway. So sometimes they need to work harder to anticipate. They also say that idea of having a quiet space with still people takes a lot of resources to police, right? To make you guys all shut up, sit, and not behave in ways that we don't want you to. You have to enforce that. So the last thing was this reduction of fuss. I think this is a really important thing so that you, as an individual accessing it, don't feel like you are making a fuss. We've all heard this before. Well, it's a reasonable adjustment. You know, we're not going to go out of our way to make them. It's only one person. No, right? That's not okay. You shouldn't feel like you are in the wrong for asking something that gives you access. So I think they're really worth looking at. So I'm going to kind of finish there, but I just want to talk about these things because I think these are the kind of topics of conversation. Now, this has been a bit of a whistle-stop tour. There's a lot more I could say about a lot of this. The way I teach this is more as an introduction for my students. So it's to say, look, this exists. There is a lot to see here. So we thought about innovation. Who innovates? How we innovate? I would say all of these innovate. All of them expose the structures that underlie the way that we live, and particularly in this case in terms of disability and lived experience in art. They all intervene in a creative way and offer something new and disturbing or disruptive or exciting. And actually, if we look at the work of Jess Tom in particular, though I would say that this is true for the other two, it changes society doing this work. In 10 years, she went from being kicked out of a venue to running it, to turning a venue into a relaxed venue, right? For me, that's incredible. And that's through action and performance. She had, what was it? The courage to do it. She had the technical ability and the creativity. And I think all 3 of these case studies follow that. They use interventions and they expose. So for me, it's about changing narratives, right? Who can be an innovator? Who can be a performer? What can happen in a space? What a disabled artist can be? What I think is voyeuristic might be my problem, not the person performing's. Legitimacy. Now, I'm not saying everything, all the actions you make have to be legitimate. If we go back to that Piss on Pity t-shirt, that was part of the, I'm going to get this totally wrong and I've forgotten the name, the civil rights movement for disability in America, because I'm just going to forget the name. They're very much about not being legitimate, about getting in people's way. But what I mean by legitimacy here is having that platform and that capital to allow it to happen. You have to work within the systems that are there to a point. So using Goldsmith's Contemporary Art Gallery as a platform, introducing performers into the Royal Academy that would never get into the Royal Academy, creating venues that are internationally known but strike out in a totally new way. You need that legitimacy. And lastly, for me, that's the key thing. It's not just about making things and selling stuff, right? It can be about joy, it can be about creativity, it can be about new ways of engaging with people, I think. So that's me, Keir Williams. Always happy to talk about any of this. Normally when I teach, this isn't my usual mode. I sort of do a bit of talking, we do stuff, there's a bit of talking, I get someone in, you probably have to dress up in one of those things, kind of vibe. I lastly wanted to say thank you so much for this opportunity. There is no greater praise than getting validation from your students. There just isn't. I teach my students, they said it's good. That's amazing. I also just want to say thanks to Keir, because I wouldn't be able to do what I do if she hadn't set up the Innovation Centre and given us a space to do it and allow us to do weird-ass stuff like this. That's it, and thanks to the organisers. So, questions?
All right, who's got a question?
Hi. Is it on? Yeah. Okay. In terms of designing for people with disabilities, do you think where is the line between you need lived experience to be able to design for it in an appropriate way to facilitating other people to have their say in design it? Like, where do you stand on that kind of thing? Do you need to have lived experience?
So, as in, do you need to understand or do you need to be disabled to create stuff for people with disabilities? No.
Yeah, where's the line?
No. So it's interesting, I think Roddy's a good example of this. Roddy doesn't identify as disabled. I don't think he's disabled as far as I know. But he works with people with disabilities, right? So the interesting thing he said is designing for people with disabilities. It should be designing with. Yeah. Even that becomes complicated though, right? Because if you start to say, well, disabled people need this, this and this, it's a static idea. Like I've been thinking about this recently between like user needs and understanding what people do, right? User needs for me is a static notion. It's like you need these exact things at this point. That's difficult when you're talking like lots, there is no one disabled person, right? So I don't know what I'm getting at here. I think I'll stop there.
Cool. All right, anyone else?
Don't have to, you can go to the pub after, it'll be fine.
Well, I have a question. And it's about, because obviously all of these examples have been from an arts background.
Yes.
And I think, do you know of any examples of like the social model of disability in other disciplines, in social sciences?
In other areas, yeah, definitely. I mean, it's the legal basis for the Equalities Act in the UK, for a start, right? So it is enshrined in law. I'm not going to be able to pick out a case study right now, though. I'll be honest. I'll be like, I've been looking at these lot. So yeah, it's not just in the arts. It's in the way that policy is dictated, right? So the way that we deal with, well, we're meant to deal with inclusion in this country is using a social model. Yeah, to be honest, top of my head, there are lots. I'm a bit blank. But it underlie, well, again, it's meant to underlie our legal standing in this country, right? There's an entire discipline of disability studies who would probably hate me for this entire talk, because I probably get most of it wrong. But there are, I don't think it just applies to one thing, right? The idea is it applies to the way you live, but also the way that you perceive other people. So I'd say, yes, there probably are millions of examples in different disciplines, but fundamentally it's a way of being or thinking about disability. I don't know if I answered that one either, but it's good. I'm going to just... Yeah.
I'm disabled, by the way. I've got 2 hearing aids and I look really, and that's really nice to see that type of change. I've been involved in Bristol City Council's disabled group. And one of the big things that came out of their discussion last time was reasonable adjustments. It's just an ongoing discussion. What is a reasonable adjustment in the workplace? I mean, a reasonable adjustment in societal terms. It's how that interfaces with the individual, but it also interfaces with business, with attitudes.
And just to say, so if you don't know, one of the legal terms is reasonable adjustments. You have to make reasonable adjustments so that people can participate. Or I'm going to get the exact thing wrong, but it has to be reasonable.
I mean, yeah, and where that
Yeah.
is. But there's also a lot of movement about looking after your mental health.
Okay.
And I've got a little, what do you call it, sticker on the bottom of my email, which is bring yourself to work. And I think it's really, to me, I can see the connection between making a reasonable adjustment and being yourself.
Yeah.
Not just at work, but in any context. And, and I think that's something I've been trying to make the connection with what you're doing.
I think what Jess would say is that if you look at the way most of us as able-bodied people are catered for, and again, I don't know everyone's experience, I don't know what conditions people have, but generally you think, say 1 in 4 people are disabled, then, sorry, let's do the maths there, that was terrible. 3 out of 4 people are already adjusted for, right? So when we talk about reasonable adjustments, well, most of us have access to stairs, the lighting's fine for us, the sound's fine for us, the seating's fine for us. So this idea that somehow, the problem with that idea of reasonable adjustment is it becomes like we can't just do that for one person. Why not? We're a rich society. We have, what Jess says a lot of the time is it can be small things or small conversations can make massive change. So a lot of the work that she does is about showing, and I like this idea of bringing the self, right? This showing that to really be yourself, there are adjustments that need to be made. Otherwise, it's not you, particularly at work. You can't succeed, you can't excel, you can't contribute into society in the way that you might. I think it's Richard Pettigrew here who said that if you think of it in terms of science, right? If you don't have all the tools of analysis, i.e. people with disabilities, if you don't have all the data, i.e. the lived experiences, then you just don't have all the data, sorry. If you don't have all that information, you then just don't have all the data. You don't get a complete picture, which again means we miss out, right? If we don't make adjustments for people. Think how many incredible artists are in the world that we never saw. And this obviously fits for gender, race, other things. Just with disabilities. Think of the amount of people that could have changed this world, maybe not just artists, engineers, accountants, but we haven't made those adjustments to allow them to. Well, no, that's not fair to allow them to. We haven't created the structures that means that they're on the same footing as us and therefore able to. And when I mean us, I mean a general able-bodied world, right? So I'd never know that thing with reasonable particularly. I've had that debate with a lot of people. What's reasonable? When, it comes down to money a lot of the time, right?
I know when you were speaking, when you were looking at the narrative, that's something that we've inherited.
Yes.
And it's very hard to come up with a new narrative without changing the purpose of that.
Or changing the world as well, right? And the attitudes and I mean, I think there is also another thing in this that she sometimes gets levelled against her, Jess, is this idea of what they call the super crip, which is this idea that with a social model, we totally ignore the impairment. You are empowered, you are better than everybody, right? Because it's a kind of an extreme position against you are this broken body, right? The danger with that, though, is that you don't then incorporate the impairments and needs that those bring. It also means, no, I'm going to stop. I pontificate and then I forget, so I'm going to stop. Cool. Thank you for your question.
Does anyone else have a question?
So bringing this back to where you started, your students who kind of end up, at the end of this trip, Joy is Innovation, what do they think of Elon Musk at the end of it?
I don't know, it's quite a thought of my students. I don't think I harangue Elon Musk very much in my lectures, do I? I don't know, honestly, you'd have to ask them, right? Quite a few of them here. I suppose.
But, I mean, is there a link between the two, or is this something that's quite separate?
What link between?
Well, that kind of capitalistic, the innovator is the a driver of the
value producer,
machine
right?
of capital.
Yeah. The link between that and, I don't quite get the question, I think is the problem. What I would say is that I have no problem with Elon Musk. I have no problem with the work around it. The exciting things he does, it amazes me. I think the issue is, again, that is the kind of the only model. And by Elon Musk, that could be Richard Branson, it could be freaking Trump, it could be. We don't want to produce those people personally. Our students can be the new next Elon Musk, and I'm sure they might be, but they have to have understanding of the wider idea of innovation, right? Because even if you want to be the next Elon Musk, if you know this stuff, you're going to do a lot better, is my point. Do you know what I mean? Like, you still need to know this stuff if you want to be a hugely successful capitalist. That's fine. I'm not going to make a judgment, but you need to know that that isn't the only form, right? I think. Thank you very much.
So thank you very much for coming. I think we should all give another thanks for Keir for what was a very wonderful lecture. And you get this lovely blue gas bookmark.
Cool. Thanks, guys.
So we have more Bob lectures throughout the rest of this month. It's on everything from veterinary sciences to... Yeah, so we've got our next one's on 5 bits of veterinary anatomy, and our last one's on radical hope, which has free drinks, so I highly recommend coming. Yeah, thank you very much for coming, and if you have any feedback or you want to be involved next year, then please let us know. Thank you.